Hi, Lee here. So if you remember last video, I had cut and glued the headstock onto the neck. I've already checked that this is perfectly straight. So the next step is to make sure the truss rod's in and then to glue the fretboard on top of the neck. And then after that I can start sanding and shaping the neck. So let's take a closer look and do that now. A couple of things I want to point out. So first of all, the truss rod channel, I actually cut it slightly too long. So what I've done is I've just put some sponge in the end just to keep the truss rod firm and pushed up against the hole at the top. I've already checked and I can access the truss rod with the hex spanner. So that will fit in here, like so. One other thing I want to point out, as much as I've read that the glue is strong enough on its own, because this is the first time I've ever cut this type of joint and just glued it, I was a bit worried about it. So what I actually did is I cut out a channel and put a screw, so drilled a pilot hole and put a screw into the headstock just for some extra support. I don't know if that's necessary, but I just feel a bit more comfortable doing that. Also, just to tidy this channel up, I've cut a small piece of wood that will just fit in there when I glue the fretboard on, just to fill that gap again, so it's not full of glue. So that's an extra step. Finally, the last thing I want to do is I want to sort of make an overlapping fretboard type design, similar to a real 22 fret fender. So what I've done is I've measured up the neck and I've drawn a line, don't know if you can see that, just so when this neck is, when the fretboard is glued on correctly, it will just overhang slightly. So the next job I'm going to do now is go on the sander and I'm just going to take a bit of material off here and then round the edges, so when I glue the fretboard on it's overhanging slightly. So now it's time to glue the fretboard on. So what I'll do is I'll start to put all this together. So a couple of pieces of sponge just to stop the truss rod from rattling. So that's truss rod in. Also this very small piece of wood that I cut just to slot in there. So I'll put a little bit of glue into that slot first. Next step is just to tape this channel while you spread the glue on, so it stops glue going into the truss rod. So you don't want that to have lots of glue in it when you put the fretboard on. So I just use a bit of black tape, just exactly the right width for this job. So all you do is you just spread the glue on, and then just before you put the fretboard on, you just peel the black tape away and it leaves a nice clear area. So when you press the glue, not too much glue, sort of it is forced into the channel, because obviously you need the truss rod to be able to move correctly. So now I'm just going to put some glue on there, mount the fretboard and clamp it together. So that's glued now. The next job is a lot of sanding. So I'm going to shape the headstock properly. I also have to thin the headstock down a bit because it's too thick. And of course I have to start to carve the shape of the neck into the back of this. So I'll get the sander on here and we'll just start working through shaping and smoothing down. the neck's pretty much done, so I'm just starting to put the frets in now. I'm not going to use glue for these. Last time I tried to use glue it was really horrible and messy, so the slots are thin enough that these go in without glue. But just to make sure they're pushed down properly, I've got a 10-inch radius piece of metal here for frets. But what I do is I put it on top and then I use a clamp and slowly clamp the fret in to the fret slot. So that's my technique, and it seems to work okay. It's really slow and laborious, but at the end of it, it looks pretty good. So I'm probably going to research online how to put frets in a better way, but for the moment that's what I'm going to do. So all I do is I cut a fret to length, I put it on, I get my radius, and then I put a clamp underneath and slowly screw it down, and that pushes the fret in, and it seems to work quite well. So I don't know if you can see that well, hopefully it's in focus, but the fret is in nice and tight. Second one in, it looks good. Oh, this is a slow process. So as you can see, I'm slowly going along. I cut a fret out, I push it in, and then I put a clamp on to push it in. A couple of them, the slot is a little too wide, so while it's clamped I just put a tiny dab of super glue in the corner that it's pulling up from. And it seems to be working okay, but I'll just crack on and carry on and get this done. One modification I did make with these clips is I actually, I don't know if you can see that, but I ground them down so they're level, so I can cut closer to the wood, because originally these aren't really designed for frets, and there's a small gap in the cutters. But all I did is I just put it against the grinder, and hopefully you can see that it's nice and level now. So just before I do the final filing, I'm just going to mask off the fretboard because I don't want to damage it. So I've taken the really hard edges off the frets. Now I'm going to mask it up, and I'm going to get the fine file to them all just to finish them off and make them smooth. I'm also going to put some thicker black tape right on the edges so I don't damage any of the wood on the neck. So I'll just finish off doing that now. Right, that's the neck nice and protected. So now I'm going to go to work with very small files, just take off all the sharp edges and round all the frets off. So after lots of sanding, I've got the frets in, it's very smooth. I'm just going to put some oil on the neck. The only thing left to do, which I'm not going to do now, is to put some fret markers in. I've decided that I'm going to put the fret markers at the top of the fretboard, just because I don't want to ruin the 3 lines I've got in the centre. So I'm going to order some fret markers and I'll put those in later. But for now, the neck is complete, and now I'm going to start moving on to the body and hopefully putting a top on the body. I'm also thinking about doing some weight relief, so I might do a semi-hollow design on the body because I'm putting a top on it, but I'll work that out when I get to it. So I'll see you next video.